so much cleaner and air conditioning because upstairs it's hotter than a firecracker. There's glass windows all along the top and along the side, and it was up with those hot lead pots by your line type machine. That was a sweaty place in the summer.
I always wanted to be the head sports writer. That was my goal. Well, in 1969, when this press started, Don Raleigh said, we need a pressman more than we need a sports writer. So he talked my dad into talking me into coming in here and starting in here. Well, I ended up in here. So when this press started up, there was Elmer Schwenker, Marv Ralph, a fellow by the name of Whitey. That was the only name I knew him by, and myself. We were the four musketeers that started this press. And John Koenig at that time was working in the Geneva paper. He did come in periodically, John did, and helped us out, but the original four guys were us four. And started this, when this paper started up. Prior to this starting up, they had a fellow by the name of Big Al, came from Canada. He was supposedly the expert on the press. And he was the one that came in here and helped put it in and get it to go. And I remember he was telling us that eventually we would work in here in white shirts, believe it or not. That's what he said. It would be so clean that you'd be able to work in here in white shirts. But that never came to fruition, by the way. When we heard Big Al was coming, it was like a holiday because this guy was, he was one heck of a guy, you know. And you were afraid of him because he would shout out the orders and you ran when he said it. I remember one time I put a plate on wrong. I didn't lock it in right. And as the paper was running, that plate worked loose and broke the web. And Big Al ciphered through and found out that I was the culprit that didn't put the plate in wrong. And he chewed me out from one side to the other. Well, it never happened again, of course, but after work that day, we would go over to this, there used to be a tavern over here, and we'd drink a few beers, and he got to be, he was just a great guy. After hours, he was the nicest guy in the world, but during hours, he was pretty stern. First day we started this press, and the mailroom was right there. Then the conveyor went back there and used to bring the papers in the back, all the way back there. You could not see through those windows. We had so many spoils. You know, when you started up, you're new at it, and it would fill that mailroom. You couldn't even walk back there. We had so many spoils before we could get it right. And it took several weeks before we would get the spoils under thousands. And later in life, when I finally left here, we had spoils under 100 per day, which was our goal to try to get, you know, when you first start the press up, when the paper starts to run, you try to get the spoils to be under 100. And the favorite words were slack back, in feeds on. That is pressman's talk for rolling the paper back and getting the web taut and tightening the brake on them. There's our brake shoes. And in feeds on, that means there's a handle here. You put the in feed on so the paper would feed freely through the press until it got going. Then you take the in feed off because it's already, the gravity would keep the pull of the paper would pull the roll through. But the favorite words were slack back, in feeds on. And that was two of the favorite words that Marvin, Elmer, and Whitey and myself would always say. Slack back, in feeds on. So that was kind of common. The first week this press was going, I worked 108 hours. I slept down in the basement and get up and come right back to work again. And the ink was so bad in your hands that after a while your hands would split open. Marv and Elmer and myself, because of the blanket wash we used, would take the oils out of your hands. And your hands, your knuckles would actually split open, and you'd have to use cream on them. And washing your hands every night got to be pretty painful because the ink, the printer's ink, would get into your hands. We didn't wear gloves, of course. You know, nobody wore gloves. And I remember a funny story is this blanket wash was kind of harsh on your skin. Well, when we got done at the end of a day, at the end of a press run, you had to take rags in those days and clean these blankets and also wipe down the press at the end of every press run. And if you weren't careful and you were using that solvent, it would get onto the edge here, the solvent would, and you would lean over to get to the blanket to wash it. Well, if you weren't careful, it would get into your pants, the solvent, and it would touch your skin on your legs. And I couldn't figure out at night why my legs were itching here. And it would blister your skin. It would actually blister your skin. So you had to be real careful when you leaned over that it didn't blister your skin.